Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Jeff and the Rabbi. So, good topic, another good, timely topic we're going to discuss today. Rights versus obligations in society. I think you couldn't find a topic that's really to the core of what our issues are today in society.
That's right.
I think this is pretty good. So I'm thinking, 51 years ago, John Kennedy, he goes up to give his inaugural speech to become president, and he says, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. Pretty much ask, not what your rights are, but what your obligations are to your country.
Right.
Can you imagine if today a president gave that inaugural address? I don't know if he'd make it from the Capitol steps to the White House.
Right.
I mean, it's not going to happen. What do you mean, what I can do for my country? You just sat here for a whole year and told me what rights I have, what you're going to do for me. I'm not doing anything for my country.
It's un-American.
It is un-American. I mean, it's just insane. I don't think the guy would make it. And I think that's the big issue. I was thinking, the last year or so, a couple good YouTube videos that I watched that were going around. One of them during the election. And it was a YouTube video of a woman. I think this, honestly, in my part, was the smartest woman that was ever interviewed during the election cycle. She knew exactly what she was voting for. Most people, you interview them, and they, well, I like the policy on it. No, this woman was clear. She said, I'm voting for this candidate because he's going to give me a cell phone, he's going to give me health care, he's going to give me everything. I don't have to worry about anything anymore.
Right.
She was the smartest woman in the entire election cycle.
And you know what? The truth is, she's a good American.
She's a good American. She's a good American. Right. This is what I want, and this is what I'm going to get. Another YouTube video about the same time, had nothing to do with the election I was watching. A local news channel was interviewing a woman that had 12 kids, by 3 or 4 different men, maybe 5. And they go through the house, and they show the kids. They're living in squalor. And at the end of the video, this was the best part. The woman looks into the camera, and she's angry. She's very angry. She says, somebody needs to take care of my babies. And it was the most brilliant thing I've ever seen. Not me.
Right.
Somebody needs to take care of my babies.
Right.
And I think that's what the big problem we've got in society today is. We've got a lot of rights. Like you watch any kind of the debates in any kind of candidates where they get the local or the normal people to ask questions. How are you going to get me a job? Who's going to take care of my babies? Who's going to give me health care? Who's going to pay for my birth control? Who's going to do that? And then each candidate, well, let me tell you how I'm going to take care of you. You have a right to this, this, and this. And of course, if it happens up here in the top of society, it goes all the way down to your family, to your job, to your office. And we forget about the one thing. For every right that you get, that's somebody else's obligation.
Right.
And that's our problem. So, I mean, what do? I'm assuming you're going to show us somehow that the Torah doesn't say you have a right to everything, but you have some obligations.
Well, I'll tell
How
you
does this work?
Right off the bat, you can look in the Torah from the first word till the last word, and the word rights will not be found.
You sure it doesn't translate, maybe?
There isn't a biblical word for rights. It's not in a dictionary. There's
Wow.
no such word. In modern Hebrew, they had to create a word. When they talk about merits, like when you earn merits, so the word for merit they use in modern Hebrew to mean rights, zechuyot. But the truth is, I like to take everything in a historical perspective.
Right.
So let's roll it back. Why is this lady and the two people in the videos that you saw, I say they're good Americans.
I agree with you.
Because, in the Declaration of Independence, once upon a time, you had tyrannies. You had King George. He was the tyranny here, but, it didn't matter. You could go to the Tsar or whoever you want. You have Louis, the King Louis in France, but they were all tyrannies. What basically they all said was, the people, you got no rights. Your job is to make sure that the king is happy.
Right.
That's your obligation. Your obligation is to work, and in return the king will take care of you like he does take care of all of his children. But really, like any child, your job is to serve.
Absolutely.
That's your obligation. So along came a new guy named John Locke, and he had a new idea, and he said, no. People have rights. So they wrote up the place that it's best articulated. John Locke, you can read him, but if you really want to get it all nice and succinct, go to the Declaration of Independence.
Right.
And in the Declaration of Independence, they said, listen, George, we've had enough of you, and we're breaking away. But it's only proper that people should explain why it is. If you're breaking up, you don't just text her.
It's me, not you.
Yeah, you don't just text her and say forget it. You at least do a little explaining, right?
Right.
So therefore, we need to explain. That's the preamble. Why are we breaking away? Because we hold these truths to be self-evident. And I have mentioned this before. When a great way to avoid a debate, open with the following line. What I'm about to say is self-evident.
That's said to me many times. It's hard to debate after that, right?
Don't even bother arguing with me. This is just, how could you say that? It's self-evident. Excuse me.
You got me.
If you didn't get it, you're just missing it because it's self-evident. Great way to squelch the debate right there.
Right.
So we hold these just to be self-evident. So George, don't bother sending a reply.
Right.
Whatever we have to say is
We're
self-evident.
not debating this one.
Right. Not debatable.
No.
Now, what is it? That all men are created equal. Okay, that's nice. And they are granted certain inalienable rights. That means that you can't take away these rights. Because they were created with rights. Now, where do those rights come from? Who says they have rights? Well, who said all men are created equal? No one. But we hold these truths to be self-evident. This is what we decided. This is the way it is. I know,
Period.
George, you
Yep.
looked at it differently, but we've decided you're wrong. Now, what are those rights? So those rights are life. You can't take away my life.
Right.
Okay. I bet you almost all people would pretty much want their life. Liberty, which means I get the right to do what I want. And the pursuit of happiness.
Well, that one's a little vague
I get
there.
to pursue, not only do I get to do what I want, but I get to pursue my happiness. That's getting a little tough.
Yep.
What does that mean? Pursue my happiness. That's not going to work. So, what do you do when you're pursuing happiness? Well, how am I going to pursue my happiness? So guess what we're going to do? I might not be able to pursue my happiness. You know what we're going to do? We're going to create a government. And you know what the government's job is?
Help
To
me pursue my
ensure
happiness?
that I can pursue my happiness.
Wow.
Because if I don't know how to pursue my happiness, so then the government's going to come along, and the government is going to be created to ensure that I pursue my happiness. And how does the government do that? Because the government is going to govern with the consent of the governed. But the purpose of the government is to help me pursue my happiness.
That's just like my home life when I was a kid. That was the purpose of my parents.
That's why they were there.
Yeah,
Your
exactly.
parents were there to make sure that you were happy.
That sounds right. Yeah.
So really, when the lady in the YouTube
Yep.
said, someone's got to take care of this, she was right, because that's why we made government. If not, there'd be no reason to have government. You think the government's not there for itself. The government's not there to make itself happy.
That's a good point.
The government is only here to have us be happy. So that's a wonderful idea, because when it came along, people said, yeah, who says that I'm here to work for the Tsar? Who says I'm here to work for King George or King Louis or the Sheik or the whoever he might be, the Pasha,
right.
Name it. I'm not here to work for him. You're here to work for me. You want to be a government? You're here to work for me. The point is, though, that what can happen is that rights and a government that's here to protect rights can turn into a tyranny also.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because
I've seen it.
how does it work? Well, we're living to see it. It takes a while. But after a while, it turns out that the pursuit of everyone's rights can become a tyranny, because there's one rule. There's only one limiting rule in a rights-based society, and that is you can pursue your rights as long as they don't hurt anyone else.
Well, that is a conflict right there, and that's a problem.
Right. Now, who gets to decide, what happens? And listen, anytime, like you said, anytime that you get a right, and you took something away from the other guy.
That's your obligation.
So, right, how are you going to balance that? Because your rights are my obligations, my rights are your obligations. How are we going to balance that?
I guess you got to have somebody decide who's more important, or who gets the right, and who has to pay for it, and whose obligation it
So
is.
then they're going to decide, okay, your rights lose out to, for this is the classic, you cannot scream fire in a crowded theater, And even though you have a right to scream fire and authority, but you lose your right because it causes too much damage to other people. What if it only causes minimal damage to other people?
Or just one or two people.
Right. That's right. What if it's most of the people would be happy, but some of the people are going to be suffering? So all of a sudden we're going to get into this game where we have to figure it out. And that is where society can become a tyranny. You could have a small group of people that demand a particular right, and the state is here to give them their rights.
But what if they're more deserving, according to the state, than this other group of people?
So then that's where the state is now going to start to make these types of decisions. And that's where it's going to get very dicey. And especially once the state has gotten like sort of hooked on providing rights, so and it loses, the more and more it provides rights, it loses the ability to limit rights. After a while, then, so now we've got the church. The church, which doesn't believe in birth control, is obligated to provide birth control for its employees through their health plan.
I guess that makes sense to the people that want birth control.
Right. People want birth control. But what about the right of the church not to provide birth control?
Well, maybe right now their rights aren't as important as the other people's rights.
Right. And what about my right to, let's say, raise my child in a certain way? Well, it turns out actually that I don't have it. That maybe I don't even have the right, because how can I impose my values on my child?
Well, as I mentioned in one of the promos I sent out, I mean, right now you can divorce your parents. If the child has the right in this country, if he doesn't like the rules that his parents are putting down, he can divorce his parents. Gone.
There you go.
So, I mean, guess you don't have that right.
So this is where the tyranny, and a classic example of this type of tyranny, look at the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows that what they did was they took the kids in and they told all the kids to rat on their parents, because they told the kids that, like, the parents who were still hanging on to like old-fashioned ideas that are anti-Soviet and anti-collectivist and anti-communist, they need to be turned into the state, because only the state's really going to care for you. So you ended up having children telling the teachers the information that the teachers needed to report back to the authorities. The parents are getting hauled off, and the kids are being raised by the state. And all the while, the state is applauding them. And at the they're putting them on the stage at the school gathering,
heroes,
school assembly, and lauding them because they were good Soviets who turned in their parents. And thank God we got those parents out of here and got them off to Siberia where they belong.
Funny that you should mention that, because I just read an article 2 weeks ago that pretty much said the same thing might be going on in our government right now. You got to listen. Your parents might not be on the right side of the gay marriage issue. Parents might not be on the right side of this issue. You need to educate your parents. You need to talk to your teachers, and they'll teach you how to go educate your parents on what's the right in society right now.
There you go.
So I guess it works that way, doesn't it?
So now, what's the other side? Do you want or propose that we should go to the obligation side? Well, the problem with the obligation side throughout history has been tyranny. There's always a tyranny. Oh. There's these potentates. There's these autocratic people that take over, and they step on everyone's face, and they don't give any rights to anyone. So no one has any rights. Do you want that? No. Do you want to walk around in society where a car pulls up and they throw you in the back seat and they drive you off and you never hear from them again?
Right.
We got plenty of those.
Absolutely.
And that's why a lot of people came to America, land of the free, home of the brave, because America offered exactly not to do that, because if they throw you in the back, you've got some rights. They got to read you your rights. You have a right to a fair trial, all this stuff. Well, people like that, so do you go the other way? So here's where you got the problem comes in. What's the Torah's solution to all this?
Right, there we go.
Okay.
That's why he's here.
That's why I get paid the big bucks.
Yes, absolutely.
The Torah has a solution to this. The Torah has a solution, and that is we live only obligations. That's for starters. The word rights is never in the Torah. Obligations, galore. You just read the first, all over the place.
There's lots of them.
There's obligations all over the place, You should love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. What if I don't want to love them? Doesn't matter. Love them anyway. What if I don't want to give them all my heart and all my soul? Doesn't matter. Give them all your heart and all your soul.
Right.
All your money, all your life. You know, it comes time to die for God. You got to die for God. That God, your life, every single thing. If God says you got to take 10% of your crop and give it to the poor people, you got 10% of the crop and give it to the poor people. But by the way, in all these things, never do you find that the poor people have a right to demand.
Absolutely.
The Torah obligates the people that have to give to the poor people. I don't have the right to demand respect for me or my property, but you have an obligation to respect me and my property, and I have an obligation to respect you and your property.
Interesting.
So it's all obligations.
Yep.
What prevents the tyranny? So really the only way that this can ever happen is if everyone believes that there is an overriding
Right.
source that not only says what's what and what the rules are,
Right.
but you also have to believe that that source really cares about you. So we are the Torah has the ultimate combination. On the one hand, it's all about obligations, and therefore we avoid the tyranny of rights. A right society can be tyrannical. On the other hand, it presumes that God loves every creature he made, and therefore we avoid the tyranny of a society of obligations.
And interesting enough, it does mention in the Torah several times about one group of people does not get, whether they're poor or whether they're strong, does not get higher rights, or different obligations than the other says. When it talks about legal system, when it talks about judging people.
That's right.
So it makes it pretty clear.
Everybody has obligations, and everyone is, the rich people are obligated to the poor are obligated to the rich. Right. Everyone is obligated. How do we prevent this from becoming a tyranny? We prevent this from becoming a tyranny because everyone is working for God, and the king has got to follow the rules too. There's rules for a king. But it's really difficult. I understand why people came up with the system that they did in America, and I understand why it was better than any other system to date. It was better because all the other people said up until now, well, God made me the king, and I am the rule of God. I represent God here in this world, whether I be the emperor of China, the emperor of Japan, the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, I'm the Pope, whoever I am. And a lot of people said, hey, this isn't working out so good.
No, the democracy system, the Bill of Rights, everything, it's a great system. But like any system out there that doesn't have an ultimate power on top, an ultimate good power on top, it's going to go too far. And that's what happens. So
what we are experiencing now, and the reason I really discuss all this is that I realize that people were talking about, we've gone around and around in circles on the homosexual debate and all that, and a number of other social issues.
Right.
And it always keeps coming out. I see a lot of people talking about, why shouldn't there be gay marriage? And people are talking about things like children need it because children are healthier when they're raised by two parents. Or, it harms classic marriage, it harms society, all this stuff. All of those arguments are based on the fundamental buy-in to the rights system, which means the only time something's wrong is if it can be shown to be hurting someone else.
Right.
So I thought about that and I realized, so what's wrong with that picture? What's wrong with that picture is, from our perspective, from a Torah perspective, we come at it from the world of obligations. And you know what? In the world of obligations, even if you're not happy, you got to do it.
Right.
So if, for example, I'm a Jewish man, and I'm living in a city and there are no Jewish women, and the Torah says Jewish men can only marry Jewish women, and there are no Jewish women around, so you know what I do? Celibate. Huh? That's what the Torah expects of me. But I'm not happy that way. I can't pursue my life that way. Certainly not my liberty, and I'm not very happy. I'm very unhappy. And yet the Torah can say, I'm sorry, those are your circumstances. You have an obligation to follow the rules. no matter what.
Even if you were born that way, and even if you
born that way,
feel that way.
You know, this is you, and you have
Wow.
every desire.
That's foreign.
And you're healthy, and you want to do what you want to do. The Torah can say, okay, but where's the Torah get the right to say that? God says, listen, I'm the one that made you this way. I'm the one that created those desires, and I'm also the one that created the circumstances. And
point.
I created the rules. You always have to observe the rules, even if you are not going to be happy. So let's say you have a group of married people, and one guy is single. Right. Nice, heterosexual, healthy single. Says, but I have a right to have a mate. So one of you guys is going to have to share with me.
Makes sense.
Right? Or let's say, we'll do it, maybe, I don't know, maybe everyone, like, give me your mate for a month or something. I mean, I have a right. How can you expect me not to be happy?
I can't argue with that.
I have a right. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to go to the government, and I'm going to say to the government, I have a right to my happiness. And it's not fair that there are 10 guys here and only 9 women.
Right.
And all these other 9 guys, they got all the other 9 women. I'm going to the government, and I want the government to enforce for me my right to be happy. There's no reason why they should be happy and not me. And you can work it out. You know, maybe we'll come up with a sharing system. We'll do round robin. I don't know what you want to do, but you got to come up with something to give me my rights.
See, and that's literally, I guess, what is happening. Maybe not to the extreme yet of what you're talking about, but that's literally what is happening in our society today. So your answer will be, these are my circumstances.
Right.
God told me I either got to move, or I got to deal with it.
And you know what? If you can't move, then you can't move. Let's say they sent a Jew out to Siberia. He's got no way to get out of Siberia. There are no Jewish women out in Siberia, so he is stuck. He is stuck. And you know what he says to guys? Is, God, that's the way you chose it to be for me. I'm not happy, but that's the way you chose it.
Again, speaking of making a speech where you wouldn't make it to the Capitol steps, I can imagine you making that speech today in society. First, the people would say, okay, wait a minute. I don't know if you make it out of the building with a speech like that. You're telling me I can't pursue my happiness?
Right. So
I got to follow rules?
I recently said this to a group of people.
How old were these people, by the way?
All adults. I said, you got a lot of people here who have children, college age, high school age. I said, here we're coming to the fall. You're going to send your kids off to college. How many people are going to sit down with their child and say, no, my dear son and my dear daughter, we expect that you will remain chaste while in college.
I'm not going to raise my hand.
People would be embarrassed either looking their kid in the eye and even saying that.
That's a good point.
The kid would look at him like, what? Where did you come from?
And like, second, what is chaste?
Right. What planet did you drop in here from? People wouldn't even say it to their high school age children. Well, many people would not say that to their high school age children, much less college age children. Right? Now, I happen to feel, actually, that these tyrannies, each tyranny is in its own way a tyranny. For example, you're a Jew. You're living in the shtetl in Europe in the 19th century. You know something? The Cossacks could come through and cause a lot of mayhem and hurt a lot of people, and the women get ravaged, and it's horrible. And everyone knew every day that it could always happen.
Right.
I don't think it happened every day, by the way. From my historical studies told me it didn't happen every day, but probably maybe once in a lifetime.
Right. It
did happen, or you certainly had heard about it happening to some other place or town or whatever. It was not unheard of, that's for sure. And people knew. Maybe it didn't happen in your town, thank God, but maybe it happened in your cousin's town, or, so it was there. I don't think it happened all the time, but it was around enough to be a real fear, and it made life miserable. Now, the truth is, you can send your kid to college now. How much rape goes on in a college?
Probably a lot.
Right? And how many, I would venture to say, if you take the, let's say, 3,000 women that live in a certain shtetl that may have been subjected to a certain amount of rape in their lifetime, and take 3,000 similar girls and put them in a college campus environment.
Yep.
The odds of getting raped, and I'm going to include rape, which means having sex when you were not consenting to it, which would mean maybe because you got a little too drunk and someone took advantage of you.
Right.
Maybe because socially you can't say no because you feel that will like ostracize you or you lose the boyfriend or whatever. Or someone's just hitting up on the girl and putting the pressure on her and, things get out of control. If you add up in all those things,
There's no doubt about that.
all that date rape, I bet you there's more date rape going on in the college campus where everyone has rights, more so
Right,
than in
yeah,
the
true.
shtetl when no one had any rights and all had obligations.
Absolutely
I think
true.
more women are getting, I don't know, and in fact it's anecdotal. All I know is that when I went to campus recently, there are signs all over the place, report date rape. Everywhere you go, the signs that report date rape. Okay? Well, there must be a lot of it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be putting signs all over the place. If it's like an odd, strange thing that happens, they don't say report West Nile virus. If it's an odd thing, they wouldn't be putting signs up.
That's why the women couldn't read in Alabama when I went there. There was an issue. Sorry. They didn't put the sign.
You had them too drugged.
Right,
Anyway.
they're drugged. Anyway, no, that's
Yeah, so all
True.
that stuff that's going on, and they're not selling a new chemical
Right.
that you can put in your drink to find out if your drink has been drugged.
that's good. True. That's true.
It's a popular drug that they're selling. It's a chemical you can put in to find out if your drink was drugged.
Right.
I mean, that's what it's come to. Like, you have to go, so if you go out, you have to, check your drink to make sure it's drugged. This is like the Kings, have someone, you better drink it to find out if he dies. If he doesn't die, I'll drink it.
Without joking, that is the instructions I gave my daughter when she goes to a party. I said, you keep your hand on your drink the entire time. And hoping it's not alcohol to begin with, but keep your hand on whatever you're drinking.
So if you
Yeah.
have to instruct your
Absolutely.
daughter,
Yes.
this is literally like the Caesar.
Oh, it is.
You had the slave drink the thing, because he would never drink from a drink unless someone drank from it first, otherwise he'd get killed.
Right.
This is insanity that, so people talk about the chaos of living in a shtetl when the Cossacks could come through and rape
Right.
everyone. Well, that's bad. But isn't it also bad when you can't even let your kid go to a party where you're not afraid that they're going to get drugged and raped?
That's a darn good point.
That's also living in a tyranny. So each society can produce its own tyranny. And we have to understand and recognize and appreciate. And for those of us that believe in a Torah, so we're happy that we believe that we've got the right balance. We've got a life of obligations backed by a loving God who is, we presume, is always doing the right for us. And even if that means not being happy at times, so we've got one of two options. One is that we believe that ultimately God will make us happy, but we also believe that if God brought it our way, we can be happy in knowing that the circumstances that came our way are good for us and they're going to grow. And, as they say, develop character. Well, they do really develop character.
And you know what? Maybe that happiness is a little more real than this kind of faux happiness that people think with all these rights.
So I would contend, I grew up with grandparents who came from that other world, that harsh world. They came to America and they're really happy. They never took a vacation
Really?
in their lives.
It's almost
never
your
took a
right to take a vacation here.
They took off. They didn't work on Sabbath and they didn't work on Jewish holidays.
Wow.
As far as traveling to go away on vacation, no. It
Never
didn't
happened.
happen. If it wasn't Sabbath, it wasn't holidays, they put on their work clothes and they went to work.
Wow.
They went to work and they worked, and at the end of the day they came home and they had a nice hot glass of tea and enjoyed a glass of tea together with this sugar cube. And it was a great pleasure. And then later on, they had house fans,
Wow.
and then they even got a TV in the house.
With the house fan.
And they could they could turn on the house fan, and a fan would blow on them as they were watching TV. They were in heaven.
Wow.
They were absolutely in heaven, and they were thinking like we are the luckiest people alive.
So they were happy. They were happy.
They were
people.
happy, and I'm thinking, they were happy because it wasn't bothering them that they didn't get to go to Hawaii.
Your grandparents didn't go on spring break.
They didn't go on spring break, and it didn't bother them
Wow.
that they didn't get to go to here. They weren't, when they were sitting there enjoying their fan, watching a TV show, they weren't bothered by where they couldn't go because they didn't have enough money or they had to, And I'm thinking like, I'm much more bothered than they are. I think they lived a more peaceful life.
And they probably were happier. It's a great point. It's a great point, and I got to tell you, I think this show, if we would have had this show a few months ago, we probably could have skipped some other shows. I think this pretty much talks about all of it.
This is really...
This is what it's about.
When I after talking about all the things we've been talking about, it's been bothering me. Like, I still felt, and I've talked to other people about it, and I got their feedback, and I realized, like, what are we missing here? Because it wasn't really making the point. And ultimately, I realized this should have been the opening conversation.
Because this says it all.
This is it.
This really does. I mean, amazing. So if you're going to pass around one show, one Jeff and the Rabbi...
This is where it starts. After that, I think everything follows. It'll be easy to make all the points that come in after that.
Yeah, this is definitely the one to watch. Because, rights and obligations. Big difference.
That's right.
Big difference. Excellent. All right. Well, we'll see. We probably said it all. I don't know if do we need to have any more shows? Is that it?
Yeah, well...
You might be done.
I'm actually thinking of starting to do a fishing show.
Oh, fishing would be good. Yeah. Fishing with the Rabbi. Coming up next week.
And all that. You'll love it.
Fly fishing with the Rabbi.
Waders and everything.
Oh, wow. That could be good. Just don't you... By the way, can you fish with a non-kosher worm?
Worm, yeah. Don't eat the worm. The fish can eat the worm.
Fair enough. All right. Well, we'll see you next week on some show with the Rabbi.
That's right.